No scammer. Yo, what's up, everybody? I hope everybody is doing well. I finally got the breakdown, this amazing research that I get to share. The reason I'm on my phone is just to make sure it's just taken so long that this is actually working, meaning the sound. Because the last thing I want to do, it's not even uploading with the group. The last thing I want to do is working is basically do a whole video and then not work. There's nothing worse than that. And sometimes these Wave Video, I use Wave Video for anybody that wants to use a video. If you're ever thinking of doing it, it's a good platform. And for some of you that do not know me, the reason why I'm breaking this down is that, like, I have been in the fitness industry 20 years, but I wasn't messing about in the fitness industry. I've actually been putting stuff to work. I've actually been working and grafting in the fitness industry for 20 years. And that means studying daily, consistently stepping outside of my comfort zone, having an open mind, having mentors guide me and teach me things every single year. I've had the privilege to work with not just some of the biggest sports teams in the world, but also I've had internships in Australia. I've worked in top gyms in Canada. I've worked in unbelievable gyms in Ireland, my home country, United Kingdom, Spain. And I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but the reason why I'm telling you this is I'm constantly and consistently up to date with the research. And the other thing as well is that I've been trained in two masters how to read research. And I'm also subscribed to like things like mass monthly applications of trend sports, consistently read and listen to roundtables and debates all the time so I can get an open mind and perspective of what I'm teaching people. So I do specialize in not just one area in fitness. I've done different qualifications in like what you'd call like biomechanics, rehabilitation, keeping people pain free, which is quite a little bit overcomplicated in my opinion. But the stuff that I've also been educated in different kinds of nutrition. Nutrition has so many different names now. You have all these different names in nutrition. To me, it's just physiology. That's just the way nutrition works. And that's why I'm going to speak about this paper as like physiology. To be fair, it's just physiology in action and physiology doing its work as it does. But then basically the other thing about like training and stuff like that, I've also got backgrounds. I did start out with a great strength coach, Lord arrest him, Charles Poliquin. Done his level 3 and 4 after me personal training, which was an amazing qualification over 15 years ago. And I've went on to do a master's in sports training. I've went on to do like loads of different qualifications, but I've also worked in the field. There's a difference when you go and work in the field for 10 to 15 years in the grind. It's a totally different thing. But look, that's enough about me. Any questions you ever have, you can reach out. This is just a little yoga vest I have on me. I do a bit of yoga occasionally too. So there was a study done on like protein. So let's go through a little bit of history on protein so we're all on the same page. Many years ago, so first off, you'd hear a lot of people and they turn around and say, science doesn't matter. Science is crap, or it's not science. Like, confirmation bias is huge and pseudoscience. I know loads of these gurus that call themselves gurus, and I have a right to say this, and most of them, they back out debates, they push people away, they haven't got the qualifications that they say, and then when someone calls them out and they get blocked. So that's what you're dealing with now. I'm aware of that. But I tell you, like, if you look at the history of protein, like there has been studies done where they said 37 grams of protein at a serving, but people made millions out of that. So you have to be careful what you listen to. All right? Honestly. So years ago, you probably would have thought, right, we must eat 8 servings of protein a day to speed your metabolism. like just to get things so we're all on the same page, it doesn't matter how many meals you eat a day, you will not speed your metabolism. That is not true whatsoever. Slow metabolism, ectomorph, endomorph, and stuff like that. A lot of that is myths too. Slow metabolism happens from different functions, from a downregulation of non-exercise activity thermogenesis, from dieting for extreme lengths of time. You get metabolic adaptation where the body becomes conservative. I'm sure a lot of you know it. But we're not going to speak about them things. So slow metabolism is for a total different video. But like it comes down to the amount of number one, calories do matter over the end of the day, but we're not going through it's just calories in versus calories out because that is not what I'm saying. But calories do matter depending on your goal, but you also need macronutrients, micronutrients, and adherence to whatever you're doing, and many other factors. I'm not. So we're going to talk about protein today. So they done them, and then like as the research went on, some of you may know there has been great researchers. One of them is there, Luc Van Loon. He's from Holland. He's one of the greatest protein researchers in the world. My ex tutor, Kevin Tipton, done most of the research ever done in protein. Lord, the rest of me diet. Stuart Phillips out of Canada. Some of you probably know him too. He's one of the greatest researchers in protein too. But people go on and do PhDs and take over these people and continue to help support and grow inside of their field, you know. But there's many other great experts out there. So there's no really anyone that speaks in absolutes I'd be very, very careful of. All right. So just remember me saying that anybody that speaks that they're absolutely certain about something, I would be very careful of. That's all I'm telling you. That's a huge red flag when you're looking for information. But so you have known some of you are probably vegans, vegetarians, and stuff like that. And like if you look at the amazing research on vegans and vegetarians now, like it's amazing that they're noticing that, like, right, it doesn't matter once protein is matched, calories are matched, training is matched, and stuff like that. It doesn't even really matter whether you have animal-based proteins. It's just that the research wasn't there. You get me? So like some of you are probably vegan, vegetarians, and you can get enough of your proteins from tofus and soy yogurts, and soy is not like a testosterone blocker either, man. All right, it's not a testosterone blocker. So just remember that. That was another study done years ago that went out into the market. But basically, what happens is, so basically what they done was, like, if you look into it, then there were studies done where they done like an upper body, with videos and that, and a full body training session. And they noticed that the full body stimulated muscle protein synthesis higher at 25 to 40 grams versus 25 grams of protein. But most of these studies were done with whey protein. Now, whey protein is digested and absorbed, and especially in isolate, is absorbed and digested really, really fast and quick at about 10 grams of amino acids an hour. I think that's the number of it. But certain foods do that too. So digestibility and absorption of protein matters. Makes sense over the day. So like the evidence has went from like 8 times a day to 4 times a day. Now we have people fasting. Now we have people like doing 3 times a day protein. Look, I would be very, very confident to say that like so muscle protein synthesis, which a lot of you know, is the creation of new protein. So it's like when you're remodeling and repairing muscle tissues to grow more muscle tissues. But muscle protein synthesis, it's not just about myofibril muscle, like your muscle for proteins. Proteins also support everything nearly inside your body. Support also mainly what you need to take it. They're supportive of enzymes. They're enzymes, but they support enzymes in your body too. Which enzymes are like a light switch, right? They help transport like carbohydrates. They help like with the metabolism of carbohydrates, fats. They help it like there's like cofactors that attach to enzymes like ions, different stuff, B vitamins, but basically they're like a light switch that knock on and off. So like protein's not just responsible for muscle tissue. So we have this like we must have protein for our muscles all the time, right? Now, which is very important. So when you stimulate muscle protein synthesis, it also supports your immune system, all right? So when working in professional football, And I have friends that work with some of the highest football teams in the world, right? And I can tell you one thing, even when James Morton, who is the biggest probably nutrition researcher in Europe, right? He's one of the most respected out of John Moores University. When he done his research on train low, which people took into train low carbohydrates. He done like can you still stimulate a better mitochondria in your cells for mitochondrial biogenesis through training low carbohydrate and sleeping low. And he done them studies. But what he done was he still used protein before in the fasted state. Do you know why? Why did he use protein? To support the immune system so the people didn't get sick. Proteins produce antibodies. So they help support the immune system too. Before we dive into this. So just remember that. Proteins were also important for your immune system, right? So why would experts like that use that? Because you don't want to get the people sick, injured, or mess the people up. Because they feel confident and competent inside of that. Makes sense? Probably 4 servings over a day. So let's get to it. So the thing is that the other thing that you need to look into before we look into this actually is older adults, which are more exposed to sarcopenia, which is muscle atrophy, which is the loss of muscle tissue as people age. As you age, you lose muscle tissue, and you get anabolic resistance. Your chances are, which you probably become resistant to anabolism, which is the creation of like muscle protein synthesis, the building of new cells, the changes in muscle tissue and different stuff over time, right? So an older person is more resistant to that. So if you looked into Graham Close's work, he was another great researcher. They've done studies where having higher protein intake on on individuals and older adults with a resistance training, which is resistance training for anyone who doesn't know is a weight training that is progressive. So let's say you're an older adult, I would be very, very confident to reverse sarcopenia and possibly reverse anabolic resistance. You probably heard of anabolism if you're in the gyms. Anabolic make things anabolic. The reason why we have protein after we train is the anabolic to build our muscles. Do you know where I'm coming from? Anabolism, the creation of new cells, all that stuff over time. But so if you did have a weight training program with higher repetitions, 3 to 4 times a week, if you don't have one of them, drop me a message. I'll help you with that, no problem. I'll help give you the right direction. And you might reverse sarcopenia. That's what studies show. Same here in Spain. There's been loads of research on that, right? So therefore, you might need higher protein amounts if you're struggling with that. And possibly that you might need 4 servings a day to keep stimulating muscle protein synthesis every 4 to 6 hours. You can still create new proteins. So I just want to show you what not to get lost in this study and think that this is absolute where science is at. This study was taken to say, right, if we have 100 grams of protein at 1 serving, does that get lost in urea, which comes out in your urine? Does it affect the kidneys? We know that's another big one. And the other thing is, does it get oxidized? Because, like, in endurance runners and runners in general, like, let's say per kilogram of people like oxidizing energy and loss, like, your body uses protein as a fuel through proteolysis. In endurance runners or endurance people, it's really high. That's why with my endurance athletes or anybody, I'd aim for 4 to 6 servings of protein. And I know a lot of people that are experts that would do the same because proteins get used because they are aerobic, they're working aerobically and every time that you lose weight, that kilogram of weight that you're losing is not just fat. It's impossible. Like some of that is protein too, because protein gets lost through atrophy and protein gets used out of the body's own muscle tissue through gluconeogenesis. All right. So for anyone who doesn't know, so that's what happens. So like you have to kind of look at like how protein is actually used, and that's where the oxidation was looked at inside of this, or where protein actually goes. Because like years ago, we used to think, right, if you have more than 40 grams of protein at 1 serving, that you lose that protein, that you lose it through urea. It comes out in your fecal samples. It comes out in, and it probably like damages kidneys and all this other myths that has came around. All right. So just think about that. So that's what, like, when you look into this. So, and this makes sense that like you have a 24-hour body clock circadian rhythms, right? So just think of that. And you have like a week. So again, they done 100 grams, but in that 100 grams of protein, it was like a combination of whey and casein protein. Casein protein is digested and absorbed at a much slower rate than other proteins. Does that make sense? You probably notice if you eat like Greek yogurt or cottage cheese or them kind of foods, and you're fuller for longer, and it's really, you hear that drink casein before bed to get yourself asleep, and you have a slower release of amino acids through the night, and that chances are that that's true. The chances are that that is true. It was Luc Van Loon in these papers that done them sleep studies, but so it showed that over the 10 hours, what happened was that that basically it kept stimulating and releasing amino acids, and it absorbed and digested and broke them down, and it was stimulating muscle protein synthesis over a 10-hour period. But that does not mean that that is absolutely relevant and that it goes against. It just goes to show that if you like, let's say, for example, you wake up in the morning, I'd be very confident, and you had, say, a large steak, right? Steak is broke down at a much more slower rate than whey protein, the digestibility and the absorption of it, isn't it? Or different foods or caseins or stuff like that. So if you had, let's say you had 2 times a day, you might be a busy woman, you might be a busy man, you might have loads of kids, you might have loads to do. And this does not go to aerobic endurance athletes or probably possibly bodybuilders or possibly people that want to maximize muscle protein synthesis. Is totally different to what I'm saying here now. But chances are that if you had 100 grams of protein at your breakfast and you could eat that, and then you had another 60 grams in the evening, like, you would be, depending on the quality, you would be still like breaking that down, digesting it, absorbing it, and still stimulating muscle protein synthesis over a day. Chances are, rather than like if you are like you might be falling off track with a load of like if you with a load of different nutrition protocols where like a lot of these fad diets have you follow a strict meal plan that you must follow these rules. It's a non-negotiable, and you must not be allowed to be flexible and adaptable. And there's no room for flexibility. Makes sense that you must do these rules. Where if you were to say look into a lot of say clients that I'd be working with, and that I'd probably even do myself, majority of the time I'm just getting to have 2 servings of protein in large amounts because I'm very confident and competent of that before these studies, because I understand physiology and how protein is broke down in the body and how it's utilized, absorbed, and digested, and how it moves through metabolism on a day-to-day basis. So let's go through the intermittent fasting, like for example, right? So if you have your last meal at 8 o'clock in the night, right, and you are having 100 grams of protein, are you fasting throughout the night? Not really. And the reason why, if you look into this, 100 grams of protein, so you have 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12, right the way probably down through to 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, you're not really fasting through the night the way you think you are, depending on when you have them kind of last. So that's what I'm trying to say. Fasting is just another way of controlling caloric intake over the day. There's no long-term studies to show autophagy whatsoever. You still get that from controlling calories and different stuff, new cell regeneration. So you don't have to go and do fasting. And if you look into the 1989 studies done on fasting, basically they were injected, I think, with growth hormone or anabolic steroids to get an elevation in the levels of testosterone that they got. We can go through them studies. But look into like this study. So like if you were to look into this, if you are somebody, number one, struggling with anabolic resistance, you are struggling with like probably an athlete that doesn't want to affect your immune system or get upper respiratory tract infections, do you think that probably 1 serving or 2 servings of protein a day will do you? Possibly not. maybe stick to the 3 to 4 servings to get the maximize out of muscle protein synthesis, to get the maximize out of your training, to maximize your recovery and adaptations a little bit higher. Not everybody can eat 100 grams in one sitting. You might prefer eating 3 meals over a day, 4 meals over a day. But so what I am telling you, if you were to take key takeaways from this, it's about you setting you up and personalizing it specific to you and what works for your life. That number one, you can make this enjoyable, realistic, flexible, adaptable, and align with your lifestyle. Makes sense? And keep you consistent over the long duration of time. And this is why I do personalized nutrition to people, because everybody is different. Everybody is totally on a different path than every single person going. And it's like people want different stuff. It's like even, like let's say if there's an upper limit for protein of 1 gram, that's what I'm trying to say. Do branched chain amino acids even be needed? Well, how if your body's still stimulating BCAA? So BCAAs, for anybody that doesn't know, is leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And also the precursors for carbohydrate metabolism also. That's what they're doing. And they're very, like, these amino acids are very, very digested and absorbed well, and they help support muscle protein synthesis. But it's being shown that the next thing I'm going to speak about right now is the biggest game changer, where I believe science is also at now and where it's going, right? So, and just to let you know before I go, sorry, I'm going off track. Jose Antonio is the owner of the ISSN, and he done studies where I think he done like excessive amount of proteins. Like I think it was double the amount, like about 4 grams per kilogram. And there was no extra muscle protein synthesis. There was no extra satiety effects on protein. So extra protein, my opinion, you'd be best off using carbohydrates. Number one, carbohydrates are more rapidly digested and absorbed and used, and are preferred to be used. And the body doesn't have to go through gluconeogenesis, which is a longer process to break down proteins and turn them into carbohydrates. Case dropped. I don't think that from physiology, I think that that's true. Carbohydrates are much more readily available, much more utilized and used, depending on available, than going through gluconeogenesis, the conversion, the breakdown of the protein, as we see, stimulating 10 grams an hour. Like, think of it. That's physiology. Now, your body would regenerate ATP, which is the energy currency for muscle contraction and different stuff every single day, much more preferably from carbohydrates. Now, let's go through the food matrix. The food matrix is, it's not just about going around eating protein, like, oh, I eat protein. You eat food, right? Now, the food matrix is having a combination of different nutrients and different food groups in a combination as we do eat meals. For an example, if you look into the studies on 4 eggs versus egg whites as stimulating an increase in muscle protein synthesis, the creation of new proteins after a workout, there was a higher muscle protein synthesis response rate in the 4 eggs. Because there's also different micronutrients inside of them, which also may support muscle protein synthesis growth and different responses in the body. Now, if you look into the cholesterol studies, where the ones that were repeated and the latest one, when they used the food matrix, which would have having fiber in the meals, which would have having proteins, carbohydrates inside of the meals, and they had 30% saturated fat, or 35%, which is above the 10% recommendation on a day-to-day basis, saturated fat. But with the food matrix involved, and the foods from different combinations of different nutrients, the blood cholesterol levels were lower in the people in the randomized controlled trials. So the food matrix would matter. And what I'm on about is, like, when you eat protein with, like, probably vegetables, and like anyone that and here that's following that thinks that vegetables are bad, there's 70 years of science on vegetables. So 70 plus years that it's not, and it's rarely ever failed, right? Now, I'm not saying that like you must listen to me, but I'm gonna go with that. I have to go with that because I'm taking on responsibility of people's lives. You get me? And I do not want to make any mistakes. And like I know loads of like doctors and stuff like that really would know that. And I don't want to be the cause of somebody's death. Oh, because there's no long duration studies done on all this stuff, but 70 years of scientific evidence. The Mediterranean diet, I live in Spain, as all you would know. Look at the longevity on the people in the Mediterranean. Like they eat this way years. You get me? Come on, think of it. But see, food matrix also makes a difference. So just kind of think about that, like having combinations of fruits every single day, having combinations of different kind of meats. And again, for I don't want to go through more protein studies, but there is unbelievable research on vegan and vegetarians right now in the research shown and also shown much great health markers for vegan kind of proteins because the micronutrient composition of some of them and stuff like that. But also animals is very, very great too. So my key takeaway of this is like just have a combination of a mixed combination of these and set yourself up for success over the long duration of time. You're coaching clients, like just become confident and competent inside of your practice. Have an open mind. Go out and learn. Step into the field with a beginner's mindset and listen and learn from other people. And like if you go onto the internet, I got this from a guy called Milo Wolf, who I study and follow. He is a young PhD, which I am absolutely inspired by. I know the work that this man is after putting into himself. I know how honest he is. I know how great he is. And I know the work that they're putting in. I'm going to learn from them. You get me? Because I'm going to make my clients better. I'm going to make yous better. I'm going to make I know that I can probably go to sleep at night knowing that I did not mess somebody up because I do have insurance to write meal plans anyhow. I'm an accredited nutritionist with Sports Nutrition Australia, which I had the pleasure to do an internship with for nearly 12 months and learn from for 2 years when I was in Australia 10 years ago. I'm very, very grateful and fortunate and lucky to have that, to be able to give this recommendation. Make sense? So if you looked into this and you said it here, find out what you can do consistent, like what you can set yourself up for success. Don't be afraid to call somebody out or question because I struggled with codependency for years, right? Codependency is like a virus, all right? That's exactly what it's like. It lingers. It's like an energy that you cannot get out of. It's really, really difficult, all right? And it's not being able to identify your feelings. And when you're the codependent, other people can control you and manipulate you and you don't even know what's going on. And the reason why I'm saying this, if you are struggling in a relationship, whether that's a coaching relationship, whether it's with someone else, and you don't believe in that process, start speaking up for yourself. Start identifying your feelings. Start looking inside of this. Or if not, even reach out to me if I can help in any way. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not that whatsoever, but I do understand these things and I do understand what this is like. You got to find out how you can set yourself up for success. What is personalized and specific to you. And I'm telling you one another thing, not every research paper means that this is valid. There were studies done in the 80s by George Brooks on the lactate shuttle, how your body shuttles lactate acid. You probably know what lactate is, and how lactate acts as a hormone in your body. Lactate acts as a hormone and communicates with different cells. Like that study today is still valid. It's still an unbelievable research study. Just because something new comes out, it doesn't really mean that, oh, this is valid. This is the way we're going now. Let's go dogmatic. No, it's personalized and specific to you. It's about finding that out for you. Again, an older adult is different than a younger adult. Makes sense? A endurance ad, an endurance athlete is different to a bodybuilding or powerlifting athlete. A person that's just general population that wants to be fit is probably a little bit more different to somebody that probably wants to train 1 or 2 times a week at the minimum amount of training dose that's required to be able to exercise. Like, that's another thing in science that I'm going to speak about. You don't have to do all this crazy training all the time to get results. Like, you can get results on protein intake, 3 servings of protein, control your calories a little bit, 3 training sessions a week. It's being done loads of times. So it's about finding out what works for you. And remember, you are totally different to every single other people. And when you are helping clients with their practices, know this stuff so you can become confident. You can become competent. You can understand how to actually put science to practice, how to bring it into practice. Make sense? How to actually make it matter and understand that science is not everything, but it's definitely going in places that's helping coaches, helping other individuals those roles, improve performances. Make sense? I hope this video helped. I hope you got the key takeaways of the video. And yes, I think that's all I have to discuss today. Any questions, let me know. I hope you're all having an amazing week. If you want any other videos broke down or any other thing broke, let me know if we can help in any way.